Okay. This is the Enneagram the Movie video podcast, and we are going to be looking at No Country for Old Men. I'm TJ Dawe. I'm here with Mario Sikora. So, Mario,
Good to
let's
see
talk
you,
about.
TJ.
Yeah, you
I'm
too.
excited about this. I'm excited, number one, to be back at talking about movies. It's been a while since you and I talk about movies all the time, but it's been a while since we did the Enneagram in a Movie podcast. And so I'm happy to be doing this, and in particular, to be talking about this movie.
No Country for Old Men is a classic. It won Best Picture for 2009, I think it was.
Mm.
Really holds up, and it particularly holds up in terms of the true to life feeling of the Enneagram types of the leads. So
Yeah.
why don't we go right into that? Because the overall premise that we established when we decided we wanted to talk about this was we've got an 8 protagonist and an 8 antagonist. So how does that
Yeah.
resonate with you?
Well, absolutely. I mean, both these characters are clearly type eight. There's kind of a type eight tone to the whole movie. I mean, it is just hard as nails and sparse and unforgiving and in your face. And again, kind of that type eight mindset. But certainly the two main characters, Llewelyn Moss, played by what's the guy's name?
Josh Brolin.
Thank you, Josh Brolin, right? And then Javier Bardem as Anton Chigurh, who really, really eight-ish characters. And it's kind of that thing about the unstoppable force against the immovable object.
Totally. There's great conflict and drama that's going to happen when you have two eights coming at each other from
Yeah,
opposite directions.
yeah,
Something's going to happen. Big sparks are going to fly.
yeah. I think too that one of the really cool things was the clarity, particularly in the Llewelyn Moss character of the subtypes. But I think in the Javier Bardem one as well, although his might be a little more nuanced and subtle. But why don't we start off should we talk about what it means to be an eight first?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I always, for me, the terminology for the type eight is somebody who's striving to feel powerful. And power is the capacity to produce a result. It's the ability to make things happen in the world. And one of the things that really drives eights is just this need to do, to push against something, to make something happen. And these guys are both really, really action oriented, right? Both really, really methodical, and very clear eights to me. I'm curious how you see it. So as an eight, I clearly see this. As a non-eight, how do you see it?
Absolutely. I mean, you see an abundance of eights in movies, and particularly in movies, because you don't have to wait too long for action to start.
Mm.
Because eights are just doing things a lot of the
Yeah.
time anyway.
And
A lot.
conflict. Yeah,
Yeah,
there's going to be
exactly.
conflict too, right?
Eights are not conflict averse. Sometimes they will seek it out. They'll instigate it if there isn't anything. Something that we see in this movie is a theme that you mentioned with eights doing things. So there's a number of scenes where I can imagine a version of this movie where we don't need to see how Anton Chigurh dresses his wounds when he gets shot in the leg, but we
Yeah,
do. I can imagine a version of this where we don't need to see the mechanics of how Llewelyn Moss fashions a pole so that you can
yeah,
pull the briefcase full of money through the
yeah,
air duct to get it
yeah,
from one motel room to another. But we do. We see him buying the tent poles,
yeah.
putting them together, snipping a wire hanger, attaching that to the end, reaching through. It's like, how does someone do things? So very
Yes,
practical, very action oriented.
yes. And not a lot of excess talk from these characters. Right?
Llewelyn
Um,
Moss thinks aloud a little bit. And I
right.
wonder if it wasn't a movie, if because I have read the novel. I don't remember if that happens, where he'll just wake up and say, "There's no fucking way," and then goes through and finds the transponder, like that kind of thing, or deduces, okay, the last man standing from the standoff.
Yeah.
If you rested in shade. Like he says that aloud,
Yeah.
but like minimal, just as few words as necessary.
Right. And I do remember reading that the directors, that particularly that scene where he is observing them or no, observing the dead guy to make sure he's actually dead. And at one point he just goes, "Mhm," you know, like you're talking about. And the directors had to egg him into doing that. And they were kind of doing it as a joke, right? Because they just wanted to see what he would come up with in that. And then they ended up keeping it in the movie. You mentioned the book, And I read the book as well, and I've got to say that this is one of the most true to the book movies I have ever seen. There's just one plot line in the book that is not in the movie, but everything else is, it's almost like reading a screenplay.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know this for sure, but Cormac McCarthy is generally thought of as a five.
Yeah.
And something Russ Hudson said in one of our previous podcasts is that a commonality between five and eight is an understanding of just how brutal the world can be.
Yes.
Just a refusal to shy away from that.
Yes.
And the ending of the movie, when Anton Chigurh gets in a car accident, a totally random car accident, for a second it seems like, oh, is there divine justice? Is he going to pay for his crimes? No, he gets injured, but he gets away. And the
Yes.
implication is he recovers and goes on to further acts of
Yeah.
psychopathy and badassery, just like because there is no justice, there is no God, there is no happy ending. Deal with
Yes.
it.
Yes. Yes. Life is hard. You suffer. You live, you suffer, you die. You know, is kind
Maybe
of
you
the
get the
attitude.
occasional good day.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about the subtypes, and we'll start with Llewelyn Moss. And so I think that Llewelyn Moss is a preserving type 8. Okay. And so when we talk about the preserving instinctual bias, it's all about nesting and nurturing, which sounds like a nice, comfortable, soft sort of thing, but through reflected through the type 8 strategy, it is about control over resources and my energy and my time and my experience. It's basically a message saying, I control my world, don't touch my stuff. Okay. And I am going to be methodical and relentless and, make sure that me and mine are taken care of. Did you see that reflected in the character?
Yeah, absolutely. His home is his castle, even though it's modest. He lives in a trailer park, but
Yeah.
he's got control of it. And as soon as he figures out what's going on and that there's somebody who's coming for him, well, first of all, he's out hunting. And
Yes.
he's not, you don't get the sense that he's hunting, he's not a trophy hunter. There's
Right.
no room in his trailer for a
Right.
taxidermied deer head.
You're right.
He's getting meat
Yes.
to eat, to provide for himself and his wife.
Hmm.
And then once he figures out, okay, some very dangerous people are going to be coming for us looking for their $2 million, immediately, let's get the wife out of town to her mother. I will stay in. I will figure this out.
Yeah. Yeah. And, for me, that reflects the quality of acting in Josh Brolin. And I think this movie was one of the best acted movies all round, that I've seen in a long time. And I did, as did you, just rewatched it last night. But he usually plays a more transmitting-ish, seven-ish kind of character very often, right? Much more energetic, but he was so kind of drawn back and, self-contained in this. I also found the relationship with his wife interesting and also reflective of the preserving eight. Um, Thoughts on his relationship with his wife?
He's very clearly in charge. Like that's the dynamic between them. I'm the king and you're not the queen. We don't share power.
Mhm.
I say what's what. And I will share the information with you that I need to, and I will make the decisions that need to be made to keep us thriving or even just alive.
Yeah. So it's interesting because I agree with you, and I saw a tremendous amount of tenderness buried deep down inside to him.
Yeah,
It was a
yeah,
protective quality, right? It's not, you're here to do my bidding. He had a kind of a light way of, teasing her and we also have to remember this movie took place in the early 1980s, which, 40 some years ago was a different kind of time. And, sex dynamics were different in those days. But I did see both this control and tenderness mixed together, which is what I see in preserving eight relationships. I'm
yeah.
here to protect you, but I got to be tough as I do it.
And there's no sense that he's ever cruel to her,
Yes.
much less violent.
Yes.
There's
Absolutely.
respect, there's love, and I'm in charge. And if
Yes.
you do what I say, we'll stay alive.
Yeah. In fact, the only time he loses his cool is when Anton Chigurh says he's going to go after her. Right. And that's the
Yeah.
point where you see him start banging the phone against the wall and, getting true. It's really the only point where he truly gets angry. in the movie
Right.
up to that point, right? Everything else, he's very stoic. So it's that protectiveness that came out.
Yeah, and that brings us to another point, which is that eights are known for being powerful, for asserting themselves, often for being angry and not being afraid of to demonstrate their anger. And yet, the way power asserts itself in a lot of eights, certainly in this movie, is very quiet.
Yes.
You never see Anton Chigurh lose his cool or raise his voice.
Yes.
You see it with Llewelyn Moss exactly once, as you pointed out. It's
Yes.
just power just seems to seethe from them at
Yes.
all times without them having to do it. They don't have to beat their chest to let the world know that they're powerful. They just are.
Yes. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And you know, it's interesting because I see it a lot in the Enneagram literature. You know, people who are not eights will talk about the eight, you know, having these fears of vulnerability, and so their strength is a way of covering up an internal vulnerability. Those people don't know eights. I mean, you know, and this is not to suggest that, you know, eights are never afraid or, you know, never hurt or scared or anything like that. You know, I'm an eight. I am on occasion. But it's, I see these things as a drive toward something. I see the strategy as a drive toward feeling powerful, not a drive away from vulnerability. Okay. Which I think is an important distinction here, right? Because, you know, if an eight does crack, it's going to take a whole lot longer than it would almost any other character type, right? And to get to that point. Um, you mentioned Anton Chigurh, Javier Bardem, you know, an amazing performance. Uh, Thoughts, observations on that character?
Yeah, well, I'm interested to hear your parsing of his instinctual bias because it
Yeah.
wasn't 100% clear to me. One
Yeah.
thing I did notice is a lot of scenes where he's asserting his power over other people. So there's the famous scene when he stops at the gas station and starts fucking with the guy
Yeah.
and eventually flips a coin and very strongly implies that if you call this wrong, I will take your life.
Yes. Yes.
There's the time that he just follows and the Woody Harrelson character who's been
Yes.
hired to get him
Yeah.
and then corners him, takes him into his room, and is just so calm as he just bats away all of that character's attempts to save his own life.
Yeah.
Just knowing like that is not happening. And it's
Yeah.
actually kind of amusing. And same with the phone call with Llewelyn Moss, where he said, the best offer I can give you is to bring me the money and you will die, but I will spare your wife.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a tricky thing, right? Because there's a lot of similarities between these two characters. Okay. But you get the sense that Anton Chigurh likes to hear himself talk. Okay. He doesn't do it a lot, but he enjoys it when he's doing it. Right. And it's sadistic because he's a crazy, you know, psychopath. So his conversations with people are, you know, they're sadistic, but what they also have is a code. Okay. There is a internal code that he lives by, right? So it's the coin toss, right? In that scene that you were talking about, the gas station. Okay. I will live by this coin toss. If it's, you know, if you call it right, you live. If you don't, I am going to kill you with this cattle stunner, right? So, you know, kind of thing. And even when he confronts Llewelyn's wife, I'm drawing a blank on the character's name, the
Yeah, I
woman.
can't remember the
Yeah.
name.
But who's a wonderful actress, by the way. She's in Boardwalk Empire and really, really good in that. But um, and he says to her, you know, because the whole idea was that he told Llewelyn, "You bring me the money, I'll kill you, but I'll spare her." Llewelyn doesn't do it, so he has no choice in his mind but to track her down and to kill her. Right? She didn't do anything. She had no part in this. She didn't get the money, anything like that. But he made a promise to himself. Okay. And
At
so what?
expense to himself, too. He doesn't gain anything by her death. It's not
Yes.
like he kills her and gets the money.
Right.
It's not like there's somebody higher than him in the food chain who will be unimpressed with him if he doesn't do it.
Yes.
This is just him.
Yes. And so the reason I started to think this character was not a preserving eight like Llewelyn Moss or a transmitting eight is because what I see in Anton Chigurh is navigating, right? So what I mean by that is there is this perception of the world and this mapping of the world. Okay. The people in it, the codes that go along with it. Okay. And if we want to think about eights, one of the things I always do when I'm thinking what subtype of the eight is this, I think of the Godfather. Okay. You've got Vito, who is the navigating eight. You've got Sonny, who's the transmitting eight. You've got Michael, who's the preserving eight. Okay. Anton Chigurh was more Vito than Sonny, right? The transmitting eight is that high energy, explosive sort of character. The navigating eight is calm, controlled, right? Thoughtful about people. I don't mean that in a kind of compassionate, kind way, but aware of people dynamics, what they do, how they behave, what is the right way to be in the world. It's almost like a Hemingway character, right? There are principles that we have, and there's a way to live that is a sign of masculinity and strength and power, but still following a code. And I don't know if Hemingway was a navigating eight or a transmitting eight, but he wrote like a navigating eight. Okay. So I see Anton Chigurh as somebody who is a navigating eight. Now, again, it's why I don't use the word social, right? Nothing social about that guy. Okay. In fact, he barely met anybody he didn't kill through the whole movie, right? Except maybe those two kids at the end
Or the
and the
woman at
guy
the
in the
trailer
get
park.
the woman at the trail bar, which was a fascinating, a wonderful scene, right? Um, and it was the recognition that there was somebody else there that made him not kill her. But it's like, what is he going to go over his quota if he kills two people instead of one, right? So
What I was thinking is that person could call the cops.
sure. Yeah, right, right.
Like it could
And
just complicate the situation unnecessarily. I don't
right,
need to kill them. All right.
right. So, and and so, and this is one of the things I love about the Coen Brothers movies. These fringe characters like that woman in the trailer park with such a interesting look to her, the guy at the gas, these look like real people, right? That you would see managing a trailer park or running a gas station in the middle of nowhere, Texas, right? Anyway, that's an aside. Yeah, so let me get your thoughts on Anton Chigurh. Is what I'm saying make sense to you, or do you see it differently?
It makes complete sense. I just wanted to get a clarifying comment from you about
Yeah.
how the notion of having a code in general, would you say
Yes.
that that applies to all navigating types to some extent?
I think what we see in navigators, so navigators want to understand the group dynamics and the mores. Okay. They want to understand what the rules are for social engagement with people. And that way I know where I belong in the group and how to function in it. And each Enneagram type will take their own distinct way of doing it, right? So the navigating four, striving to feel unique, is that I'll be the kind of person on the fringe here, observing from the edge, 1 foot in, 1 foot out. The navigating nine will say, okay, I will find a way to not alienate anybody, and I will find a way to fit in with everybody and merge with the group to the extent of giving up my agenda. What the navigating eight does is says, here are the rules and mores that put me in a position of power and control over my social environment. Okay. And the way I interpreted Anton Chigurh's behaviors are, this is the code. If I live by this code, I will continue to be strong and powerful and in control of my environment. If I do not, then who knows what's going to happen. Okay. So it's not about
So,
resources, right? The money doesn't matter to Anton Chigurh, right? That's just a job to him. It's not like he's like, hey, this is my $2 million. There's just nothing about him that shows any interest in physical needs other than patching himself up after he gets shot or the car accident. There's just nothing that makes it seem like anything in the world is important to him but being in control of his own destiny and his own way of engaging with the world and the people in it.
So to phrase it another way, navigating types want to know who's who and what's what,
Yeah, who's who, what's what, and what are the rules of engagement here?
even if they're self-generating.
Absolutely. If I have to now, what it will look like is, I'm not going to make my own if it puts me out of step with everyone else. Now, an eight will impose their own rules on things, right? So, again, if we go back to The Godfather and think about Vito Corleone, it's, I'm looking for ways to build alliances. I'm looking for ways to build relationships. But when it comes right down to it, I'm going to have Luca Brasi put a gun to your head and, establish the rules, right? But it is all about rules. I'm going to make you an offer you can't refuse. Okay. You will live the way I want you to live, and so forth. And again, this is what Anton Chigurh is doing. I've got a
And I
mission, and these are the rules of engagement for it.
and I cannot abide it when someone transgresses the rules,
Yes. Yes.
which is when he goes and he kills the, I guess it's a DEA agent, Stephen Root, who
Yes.
he finds out gave the Mexicans a transponder and
Yes.
sent the Woody Harrelson
Yes.
character after him as well.
Yes.
So he just
Yes.
goes in, very cleanly shoots him. Boom.
Yes.
Again,
No
didn't
questions
need to.
asked. Yeah.
Yeah. No negotiation, no begging for mercy, no villain monologue like you often see.
Yeah.
Just like
Yeah.
squeezing a pimple.
Yeah.
Like this needs to happen.
And leaves the other guy standing there, right? The other guy in the room, the underling, as if he's a bug, right? He's completely indifferent to him. He's not worried, okay, this guy saw my face, anything like that. He's not saying, okay, I can't leave witnesses. He does turn to him and say, the guy says, are you going to shoot me too? And he says, do you see me? Right. Just, cold as ice. The guy says no. And then he's like, all right, good. I'll leave. Right. So, again, it's not personal. Okay.
It's the rules.
It's just the rules, right? This is how things work. It's, you and I have got nothing to do with it. And it's the only thing, and this is interesting because I hadn't really thought about this until now. This movie is about rules in a way, right? Because you have the Tommy Lee Jones character, the end of his career as the sheriff, okay, and saying, you know what, I just don't get people anymore, right? I just don't. I feel overmatched. I don't understand why people do the things they do these days, right? It used to be, you didn't need to carry a gun if you were the sheriff, right? And now you got people, cutting each other's heads off and putting them in refrigerators and these sort of things. And I just don't get it. So you've got the Tommy Lee Jones character who is, I think a transmitting one in this. And I think people often see Tommy Lee Jones as an eight. I honestly think he plays a transmitting one in most of his roles. It's this intense, firm, follow the rules, follow the procedures sort of thing. It's this evaluative quality, right? And so I think with him, he's trying to figure out just what the hell are the rules anymore. And because I don't understand them, I have to get out. Right. Now you've got Anton Chigurh. It's all about rules, right? I know what the rules are. I set the rules. Others will follow them, whether they like them or not. Okay. And then again, you've got Llewelyn Moss almost living in a world without rules and trying to figure out what is the best thing to do. I mean, he was a Vietnam veteran, so the jungle is almost a good analogy for Llewelyn Moss, right? It's like, man, there's just some crazy shit going on here, and I don't really know what to do. All I know is I need to keep moving, right? I need to survive this. I need to, go, save my wife, etc.
Yeah, at one point he says to his wife, like, how long would you stop looking for your $2 million?
Yeah.
Like he's very attuned to like the situation he's in. He's not gonna sugarcoat it for himself.
Yes.
Given
Yeah.
he's not gonna rewrite reality to be the version that he wants.
Yes.
He's like, no, I've taken this money. Somebody's gonna come for it. They're not
Yeah.
gonna stop.
Yeah. I think it's also important here to understand about eights as portrayed in this movie is the relentlessness and the inability to stop and give up, right? Now, of course, every eight's going to get to a point, I would imagine, where they say, okay, enough's enough. But in critical, neither of these guys have it in them to stop, right? And even, the wife says that to the Tommy Lee Jones character, he's going to keep going, he always has, right? And that's just who he is. And it's also who Anton Chigurh is. I just can't stop. I'm currently today, I've been engaged in some Facebook back and forth on, about the Enneagram. And, I posted something and people are arguing with me. And when we're done this, I'm going to go back to finishing the conversation because I will not stop. If people are going to still comment, I will respond to the comments and I will have the last word because I don't know how to do anything else.
Okay, side point about these characters.
Yes.
Russ Hudson and Don Riso, for the fixation of eight, the traditional fixation is vengeance or
Yes.
revenge. Riso Hudson version is objectification. And there is plenty of revenge in this movie. You took
Yes.
this thing that's mine, I'm going to get it.
Yeah.
There's also a fair bit of objectification of oneself. So there's a confrontation between Moss and Chigurh where each of them gets shot by each other. And then they go their separate ways to recover.
Yes.
Each of them is able to somehow dim their own severe pain so that they can get to where they need to go and do what they need to do to treat themselves. And in the case of Anton Chigurh, he treats himself by himself. Llewelyn Moss goes, he crosses the border, but he gets the coat. He buys the coat from three Americans coming across the bridge and gets their beer so he can fake his way across. But still, he manages to do this. He stifles his pain. So in both cases, they turn themselves into objects to get the job done so that they can heal and then go back to the main mission, which is revenge.
Right. Absolutely. So is your question, do I see revenge or vengeance as the fixation or objectification, or just, comments on either one of those things?
Or do you see objectification as an element of eights?
Absolutely. And there's a logic to it, right? And so, one of the things about the fixations, we just did on the Awareness to Action Enneagram podcast, we've been doing a series on the vices, virtue, and fixations. And look, there's no one right answer to this, right? I mean, none of us only have one fixation. There's one that, we're talking about and that sort of thing. And so I can see either of those things. I did see at one point a video with Claudio Naranjo where she was saying, I really don't think vengeance is the fixation for eights. I don't think it's that big a deal for them. And I'm watching this and I'm thinking, dude, you got this one wrong, man, because vengeance is what it's all about. But the reason vengeance is such a thing is, look, I'm striving to feel powerful. If you get up on me, I don't feel powerful anymore. Okay. You have more power. Vengeance is just me getting back to a power position. Okay. It's not the vengeance itself that matters. It's the result of the vengeance that is achieving what the eight's looking to achieve. Okay. Now, one of the things about power and being in a position of power, and this applies to people who are running organizations, people who are running militaries, people who are psychopaths who are hunting down, hunters who stumbled upon $2 million, is in order to do hard things, you have to turn off your emotions about them, right? It is hard to, it's hard to shoot somebody if you feel compassion toward them, okay? But in a less extreme situation, it's hard to fire somebody if you feel compassion toward them, right? And eights, because of who they are, because of their decision-making nature, because of their need to be in positions of power, they have to do a lot of those hard things, okay? And so what they do in that situation is, you know what, I've just got to turn off my feelings, okay? I have to stop seeing you as someone capable of suffering and pain and all these sort of things, not because I want to, but because I have to in order to do this thing that I couldn't do otherwise. Okay. Now, some eights are really, really good at that and spend a whole lot of their time objectifying other people. And to your point about objectifying themselves as well, it really is this. I just have to cut off that human side of me. I mean, you look at it from the Llewelyn Moss perspective, right? So he's the antagonist of this. And he has to do really difficult things to survive and to save his wife. And that means, you know what? I just got shot for the second time in 3 days. I mean, look, somebody shoots me. I don't know that I would have that kind of grit that he does, but, for sure. But he says, you know what? You have to give up your humanity. You have to give up your ability to feel suffering in order to achieve the mission. So I think objectification is absolutely something that eights do, and something that's on display in this movie as well.
Okay, great. Well,
Good.
That's the point. Is there anything
All
that you
right.
wanted to say about No Country for Old Men?
No, I just want to say, look, if anybody watching and or listening to this has not seen this movie, do yourself a favor. Go out, rent it, watch it again. It's a movie that I find holds up better the more I watch it. There are little nuances, there are little performance things that I just sit and say, wow, and just love. Even the what's his name? Garrett Dillahunt character, the deputy. That guy is awesome in this movie, right? I mean, just every line that comes out of him is amazing, right? So every character is fascinating. Go watch this movie and read the book too. It's well worth it.
And it's a masterclass on eights.
Yes.
So if anybody wants to portray an eight or just understand the inner mechanics of eights, this is a great movie for that.
It is. All right. Thanks, TJ.
Thank you. Okay, we got